Hi everyone, and welcome back to Andy and Josh Correct My Swing Chats. Sorry, we still haven't found ourselves a new title, but we will get there eventually.
It's a work in progress, isn't it?
Progress. So today's chat is going to be all about junior golfers. We've recently been having lots of conversations with some what we believe are incredibly good golf teaching professionals, and we've been obviously explaining what we're doing in the world and our Correct My Swing products. And the question keeps arising about junior golfers and the benefits of doing this. So if you are a junior golfer watching this, welcome. This is my name's Andy and this is Josh. If you're a parent, then I would spend the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes for discussing this. I think that you're going to get some real big benefit from our discussion. So we can just highlight a few things that we can help you as the golfer or you as the parent to get the best out of your child, and also to make sure that their golf is the best or they reach their potential. I think that's what we're passionate about, especially in junior golf, that, you know, they reach their potential if they're getting good coaching.
Certainly for me anyway, at that age, just making sure they still enjoy it. Yeah. They still enjoy doing it. That's the big thing.
And you can't not enjoy golf, can you?
Oh, no, you can't not enjoy.
No, you're
golf.
right. I mean, and the thing is,
ultimately,
right,
they've got to love it. They've got to love doing it, and they've got to want to do it.
And that's we're not naive to realize that, if you are watching this and you are a junior golfer or a parent, that we're also aware that most of you will be playing lots of different sports. So actually what we've got to say in development and what we've got to say actually covers everything. So I think it will be an all good thing. We're also very fortunate that we will be in our next one of these shortly. In the next weeks, we'll also be talking about this subject in a bit more in depth as well with one of my good colleagues and mine and Josh's good colleagues, Howard, who has said he will come on, who's a youth strength and conditioning coach. So again, will be more information for you all. So where would you like to start, Josh?
Well, I think probably the most common question was the age thing, wasn't it? Was in terms of like how old, how sort of is it suitable for juniors was the first one.
Yeah.
So junior golfers, and obviously yes, it is suitable for junior golfers. And then the next, the follow-up question to that was, well, like how young can they start, or how old is like the youngest age bracket that could do it and do it like successfully as such.
And it's a really brilliant question, and there's probably a lot of if we're going to get my research science head on, which appears quite a lot sometimes during this, I think I still think that's quite open and very individual. So for this, I will talk very much from my own personal experience with working with that age group, especially with elite junior athletes, which I've been privileged to work for the last nearly 15-20 years. So I've got a little bit of.
I think that's important as well. It's not just being led by the science and being led by the research. It's like it's important to have that information like in your arsenal, but it's more important to have real life experience. So, well, actually, when we've used this and conducted these methods with junior athletes, we found, and you've actually got the physical evidence to back it up, rather than just being like, oh well, I've read this article and this research paper suggests whatever. And like, I think that's the real big sort of.
And so to answer the question, the real factor is the realistically, I think supervised. So if we start from if you were supervised, and I mean supervised in the sense of you're being one-to-one. So if I was coaching the junior athlete, we could probably start as young as 8. Now, I've got an 8-year-old daughter, and so you would have to give her lots of feedback and lots of cues. So, our product primarily there's a video which they can follow. So, we've always found that kids from 8 to 12 predominantly would need an external kind of support. Now, obviously, that's, there's extremes of that. I've had 8-9-year-old kids in clinic who you show them once and they go, boxed it straight away. And I've got ones that need a lot more cues. So, as a rule of thumb, I would say, children between 8 and 12 would need a lot more support. So if there is, it would need a parent to work with them. It would need a coach to work with them. what we found generally, though, that children between 12 onwards, if they've watched the video and they can follow the instructions, can generally, as a rule of thumb, follow a video and an instruction pretty quite well. Okay, so, you know, they watch an exercise. So, you know, we're asking them to do a climb-based exercise. So if you're not familiar with this is where you're kind of laying on your sides and with your knees bent and you're just kind of lifting up. So lifting one of the knees up. So they would be able to follow that and be able to follow instructions really quite well. Now, you know, because all of our products that we create and the stuff that we've done, especially our backswing product, is a low threshold product, it means that actually this is more designed on improving your mind and muscle connection. So actually, when we start looking at that, the part, because there's always there's always a thing with any junior stuff and safety of load and
that's it, yeah. Like
you know,
too many repetitions and too often, too much volume of it, too much of it.
And you know, I think there's especially, you know, you're from the S&C world, aren't you? And one of the things from the S&C world is that they would, you know, loading is weightlifting appropriate for kids. And, you know, I'm sure when Howard gets on there, we can absolutely nail that question to him, which he's absolutely delighted to answer. Or we've just totally stitched him up one or two. But the fact is that, you know, what our program isn't about is about loading. It's about mind and body connection. So a mind and muscle connection. So actually, so for most of these kids, that's going to be a really, really improvement, because what we do know, and let's be honest, we've all been 12, okay, and we've all grown past that. You know, some of us had more hair when we were 12, but you know, it's so I think the key thing is that, so, and that's the whole point about this is doing some low threshold exercise, so muscle recruitment stuff, safe 100%. Will it benefit a golfer and a junior golfer? 100%. And there's lots of different reasons behind that. You know, what we know is that obviously as we're growing, we're learning and we're coordinating and we're developing all the time. So, you know, actually there's an argument to say the more that we improve that mind and muscle connection as we grow, or the more time we're spending focus on that, that's going to help us in that adaptation phase of growth.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which actually is really important. You know, from my experience working with junior athletes, they go through, and if you are this age, I apologize for this, a Bambi on ice phase, I call it, where basically you almost, if you go through a growth spurt, there's a period of uncoordination while you kind of have gone through a change and stuff. So I think especially, so the more we can do that, and especially if you're being coached at a good level, then, you know, the idea is if you can then match some good muscle, you know, some good mind muscle connections in our low thresholds, along with some good coaching, then you're going to get either quicker gains on a golf course, which
you accelerate your progress and you deepen your muscle recruitment. So like I say, when you do go through those growth spurts and phases, that hopefully the kind of regression in performance wouldn't be quite as severe, because you've been deepening those pathways and creating the pathways already.
But it's also a great thing to, you know, if you think you've got, you know, I'd love to go back. I mean, I'm, you know, I guess my whole sporting career is I was always one of those things where I was always top to average at stuff. I never really got to excel. I could play a variable of lots of sports pretty good, but argue pretty can, apart from when I watch me and you play golf. But, you know, pretty much I'd say that. But when you actually look back and you think, could I have excelled if someone had improved me as an athlete, as an elite? I mean, let's be honest, I'm touching 14 just next year. And, you know, that no one took us aside and said, you know what, this kid would be good if he just got better at coordinating his body.
Yeah.
And the thing with golf is, in my opinion, that it's such a skill-based sport.
Oh yeah.
But actually, you know, the fact if you're in tune more with your body at a younger age, you definitely start going to be able to pick up those kinds of the skill set and the skill element of the sport a lot better.
Oh, yeah,
like you said, there's an argument to say that if you can get those patterns almost ingrained in our brain through that kind of mind-muscle connection, muscle memory and muscle association, then that's going to be skills that, you know, kids are going to be long term are going to benefit.
Oh yeah, in terms of the long term stuff, you then start to talk about things like habits, don't you?
Well,
and if you're creating good habits at 10, 11, 12, or as if you're like if you're a parent and you want to try and like help your kids as much as you can and guide them, and obviously you want to take part in sport, but equally you want them to be able to do it and enjoy it and kind of reduce their injury risk, but you can't mitigate that completely because that's just the nature of sport. But if you can do enough things that stack the odds in your favour, that reduce the risk as much as you can control, as in doing a good, correct warm up as part of just normal practice, but then within that warm up you are doing specific activation work that is directly linked to how you move, then really you can't do any more than that. So it can act as like creating really good habits from a good age, and it just makes it normal. It just makes it part of, well, I'm going to go for a round of golf. Right, well, I need to spend 15, 20 minutes doing some stuff to get my body ready. Like that's just what you do. That's just what happens. And that 15, 20 minutes is just naturally built into like pre-round stuff. Whereas like a lot of people just go and sit and have a coffee and then run to the first tee because they've lost track of time.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I'll go and have a brew, but I'll just have a quick brew and I'll go and stand outside, or I'll go and stand in the locker room and do my warm up and do my little bit to muscle activation just to make sure my body's ready. Certain parts of my body, certain muscle groups are ready, because they're going to be required to do a bit more than others.
100%. You know, and more. You know, we spend probably the majority of our time helping adults create good habits, don't we? You know, what I mean? Or trying to, you know. But the problem is when you're an adult, you're so used to your bad habits that actually it's a real challenging thing to do. So I think as a youth athlete, it's fantastic that we can get the opportunity to educate them on, you know, how these good habits, but generally just look after your long-term movement health. Your general, even if it comes to a point where you don't actually decide to, you know, you choose not to take golf in, but you know, it doesn't matter what sport you actually play, and it doesn't matter if you know, you're playing five-a-side with your mates, which actually is probably one of the most injury-prone sports you can get. You know, because it's one of those things. I think fundamentally that, you know, the skills that you're developing actually will benefit you in any sport moving forward. So I think that habit one is a really nice one. And I know that, you know, from my experience with, again, working with at an elite level of movement, that especially in Premier League football, in their academies, what's one of the things that they've actually established is they've got these young kids to actually activate, or, you know, kind of pre-ab kind of stuff that they start that at a junior level. So actually, for those that make it as a professional, it's kind of like, well, this is what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just part of the makeup. It's like teaching them to take responsibility for themselves. And like, as much as you have experts like yourselves to like bring them back from pain and bring them back from injury and get them back to performance, and obviously ideally better than before, but ultimately if they can stay away from treatment rooms, that's what they want, that's what teams want, that's what team owners want, that's what everybody wants to be able to do, is to stay away from physiotherapists, stay away from having to have like massages all the time and releases all the time, and like just try and get me away from pain as much as possible just so I can play, like, because the long-term effect on your body is well, catastrophic. It's terrible, absolutely terrible.
I think there's two things with that. I think number one, you know, you started with, you want kids to enjoy the sport, you know, and I'm totally agreeing. I think all kids should enjoy sport. You know, I think we should be out more and playing sport, and it's definitely something I encourage my daughter to do, is that, you know, you just do what you love, and we just do things that we love, and I think that's really important. And let's be totally honest with golf, it's one of those sports we can love it. It's a love-hate relationship depending on the day and the round, isn't it?
Definitely like Marmite.
You know, and it's one of those where you kind of go that, you know. Now, there's also an argument to say that if you're doing everything you can to prove how you move, then you're putting your body in the best place to perform at the best, isn't it? Now, and if you're a parent watching this, you know, like a parent, one of the things you want to do is the best for our kids. And what we've actually found is that, you know, and I can't talk too much on this, but I'm sure if Howard does, he can actually show statistics of what we've worked with their junior tennis academy and the injury reduction rate that we've had just from teaching. And again, if you think of tennis and golf, the level of repetition is exactly the same. I know I've only been having coffee as well. You know, it is really quite high, and the rotation levels and the stresses on the body. So we've actually found, and you know, we found exactly the same in golf, that actually if we can activate some muscles well, what we actually found is performance better. So we spend more time on the course, we play better, we enjoy it better, and let's be honest, you know, we all, you know, you develop that confidence as an athlete. You know, if you're playing better, you know, some of the best golfers in the world, you know, they've got so much inner confidence because they can believe in their body that actually they perform better. And that's part of what they can do if you do some activation work.
And it's good because that's tangible as well. Like getting physical results, like not so much maybe seeing results in your movement, because there's so much out there now that almost like, well, they're not interested in golf performance in terms of, oh, well, like I've got your strength numbers up, I've got you more flexible. Yeah, but I'm still playing rubbish. Like ultimately, like what's the point? Yeah, you can squat more, you can deadlift more, you can touch your toes now, fantastic. But I'm still in a massive hook. Like I still can't control the club face. So ultimately, like what's the point? But if you're doing stuff that directly impact or directly links to how you move and your ball flight, and your performance gets better, straight away you get more buy-in. They believe in it a bit more. But because you are getting those like tangible results almost like straight away to a degree, but then kind of thinking a bit more like longer term, kind of like where golf is now in terms of as a game and what's being promoted on the TV, certainly by like the PGA Tour players, and then all your analysts, like the so-called experts, that are doing the commentary and punditry. And you get the likes of like Bryson DeChambeau now putting all that weight on, putting all the extra mass on to basically just become a long driver on the PGA Tour. And yes, like his stats do point toward that it's improved him as a golfer, but it's only stats in terms of like it's a very one-dimensional look. That the stats say his distance is increased off the tee. It's almost like, well, yeah, tell me something I'm not going to know already. Like that's stating the obvious. His clubhead speed's gone up, of course his distance is going to go up. His strokes gained off the tee has gone up. Well, like he's still hitting the fairways, but he's hitting it 30 yards longer. So of course he's gaining strokes on the field off the tee. But is he blowing the field away because he's hitting it so far? Is he breaking course records? Is he winning week after week after week after week? And I know we've only been back, what is the second event back now? And he was kind of in contention last week, but fell away towards the end. That's nothing to do because he hits it so far. Is that because having to expend too much energy on every tee shot? Is it because other parts of his game are starting to fall down a little bit? I don't think we know quite yet, but kind of getting back to tying into the whole movement prep stuff, that's certainly the way the game is going, is that it's about speed, it's about power, it's about distance. And I know talking to some of the coaches that golf has always been a very one-dimensional sport in terms of how it was taught. It was very taught, just golf swing, just golf, just work on your golf swing and you'll be a great golfer. And we now know that's not the case. Arguably, it's irrelevant what your golf swing like. If you can be good at impact and repeat it, and then have good facets, or all the other facets of the game are taken care of, then yes, then you'll be a good golfer. Like there's so many people that hit it miles, but they can't chip, and their approach play is terrible. Like it's irrelevant of how far you can hit it, but if you're still missing greens, still missing putts, not getting up and down when you miss greens and not hitting it close enough, doesn't matter how good you are off the tee, utterly irrelevant. And if that's the way it's going, and if that's what's being encouraged, then doing things like this is only going to help to act as a safety barrier for younger athletes, for younger golfers, that when coaches or when sort of development programs inevitably get hold of them, and they've got pressures on them to provide to produce results, and part of their criteria is distance off the tee. And if they've got kids that are coming through who are already doing pre-activation work, who know they've taken care of how they move and they've not got any compensations, then almost that's kind of like a green light to say, okay, well, now you're okay to start to not chase speed, but certainly look to increase it because we know you can safely control it. Whereas most people, most younger athletes, obviously growing and everything was talked about, can't control it. Like, they can't control where they move from. So they start to chase speed anyway. Injuries, other performance markers disappear because they're having to make compensations everywhere else.
And I think that's the important thing to understand is that, the body will always compensate and it's not always visual. We've had a conversation with our team today. And one of the things is that actually sometimes you can't always see it in the swing. So some kids could have a really good swing, but how they're actually compensating. And, we see this an awful lot in adults, don't we? We watch the swing and they go, do you know what? They swing pretty good. Then we watch them move in a movement analysis screening and we actually see that actually they quite heavily cheat to get into a certain position.
Yeah, massively.
And the problem with that then is that obviously those compensations, and then we kind of link it back to why they're poor consistently, or they've had that chronic lower back problem, or they've got poor.
That was another one. It's oh god, my shoulders are just always a bit niggly. Like, well, that's why. Like, you're cheating there to get into that movement. That's why you got a bad shoulder.
And I think that the thing is, like, I think the key thing is with everything we're saying is that the most important thing for a youth athlete, in my opinion, is to build good foundations. If you want to be a good athlete, then you've got to build good foundations. And I think, like you say, if you're one-dimensional in your training, that you're just looking to get faster and you're looking to get stronger, then, unfortunately, the evidence would say that you are on a ticking time bomb to either have a decrease in performance or a performance. So you'll go through a time where actually
you get the initial spike of improvement.
Yeah, you'll perform worse on the course because you'll develop restrictions, you'll develop compensations, or that you do develop a muscle imbalance and that creates some kind of injury, niggle, or again stops you from enjoying the sport because it hurts to play. One of the things I would argue that both of us are incredibly passionate about is that we want to keep people on the course, but also we want to make you play better. And it was exactly like you were saying. There's no point coming into a gym and saying, "Oh my God, look, you can jump."
You've got an extra 7 inch on your vertical jump.
Brilliant. How many shots you knocked off? How many shots you knocked off?
Kilos on your back. Yeah, on your back squat. Like, your club head speed's gone up 5 miles an hour. Your driver 15 yards further. Still hit out of bounds 3 times. I've just hit even further out of bounds. I can't control the club face.
And I think also it comes down to, to be a good golfer at a junior level, senior level, professional level, whatever you are, you have to practice a lot.
Yeah. Listen.
You've got to spend hours and hours.
Get away from that, can you?
You've got to spend hours and hours and hours practicing. That's just fundamentally that you only get good from practice, right?
Yeah.
But one of the problems is with golf is that it creates asymmetries in the moving body patterns, right? So, you are going to get that. And actually in adult, it's actually shown that due to the acceleration and deceleration forces in muscles, it creates muscle length changes between the left and right side, depending on what the muscle has to do during the swing.
Yeah.
Now, in an unstable growing body, we have to be careful what we say because there is no evidence to actually back up to say, if you do this, that you're not going to get injured because, like you've said, it's sport. And wherever there's repetition and wherever there's growth athletes, there's always going to be things. But there's still a big argument, in my opinion, to do everything you can to make sure that you are dealing with or handling those imbalances that we know exist and we know those asymmetries are going to happen.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you are looking after your joints at that young age because you are putting a tremendous amount of force through it for, you look how fast some of these kids swing a club. It's off the scale. It is. And you then compare that to the amount of force that's going through a maturing body. And like you were saying, the concern is that, if you haven't got that ability to control that, then there's an argument to say there is a level of risk. Now, I would argue the level of risk and, in what's been in a lot of rotation sports, it's very clinical in the evidence. And, this isn't to scare anyone watching this, but stress fractures in the spine are common. I think there was a study done, especially in tennis, where something like it could be up to 80 kids of elite tennis players had a level of stress fracture in the spine. The scary thing is, Josh, none of them were in pain. They didn't know about it. They were just, it's there because of the amount of stress that goes through. So, and again, so it's really important to understand that actually, if we get muscle imbalances right, and especially, one of the big things for me is in golf, and what the common thing we see and we talk about a lot is the lack of oblique in this ribs. And the problem is now in the follow through, we're almost driving into this hyperextension side bend position.
Huge amounts of force are in a bad position of your lower back that's not meant to be in that position.
And again, so what then happens is, so this is why we're quite passionate about this, and we're trying to get this down to as many kids and as parents as thing that generally, we're not trying to put you off. We want to try and enjoy your sport as much as possible.
No, but it's just doing things that stack the odds in your favour.
Simple stuff.
Yeah. Things that you can control, things that you can do, things that you can spend 10, 15 minutes doing every time you play. Wake up every morning and do it. Every time you step foot on the range, do it. Before you go on the golf course, do it. It's 10 to 15 minutes. It's no big deal, but it's just stacking the odds in your favour. Like we said, you cannot take away the risk. It's sport. You cannot mitigate it to a point where there will be none. And I mean, the way sport is going on a larger scale, certainly that's what like governing bodies and people are trying to do, is taking away parts of sports because they're trying to reduce the risk too much, but then you take away the actual sport itself.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could do things that, reduce that risk, that are within your control and can stack the odds in your favour, then that's all you can do.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that, and I guess, a level of bias coming out, but that's why what we do and what we give, junior athletes is all stuff you can do at home as well, isn't it? This is stuff that you can be sat in front of watching your favorite TV program, or, mums and dads can do with the kids. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah, that's it. You can all do it together. We
almost actively encourage that. So, if you've got a kid doing, if you're doing your exercises and you get, you can almost be getting your parents to do it with you. So mum, dad, if you also want to improve your golf.
Even if you don't play golf and like you're sick of your shoulders hurting and stuff, just give it a go.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you just get used to sitting down all the time and not moving and not activating certain muscles, then they're going to become short and they're going to become weak and they're going to become tight because they're not being used. So use them and get some range back, get some joint health back.
Listen, I've built a whole career getting people who's coming injured, getting them to move better, and then returning better athletes or better at stuff. That's so actually what's quite nice is if you're not injured and you just don't want to get injured or you want to perform better, actually you do exactly the same process without having to come to see a physio, because as you all know that, you come in pain and we put you in more pain for a bit, make you do loads of daft little silly exercises and then, send you on your way, So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's something we need to explore more. From our perspective, we want to talk about it more. And, what I'm very keen to do, if there are parents or youth golfers watching this, please do send us your questions. Please do send us your concerns. Be very specific with us. And, we can be very specific. We have a plethora, I love that word, of information and knowledge that we can tap into as well. So be very, very specific. So, if there's anyone out there who has any questions around this, any concerns about the kids in that unit, then please do reach out to us, helpme@correctmyswing.com. And we're very happy to kind of have those conversations with you and then we can show you what we can do to help as well.
I think that was a good one, don't you?
Right. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll speak to you all very soon.